Hey, what's going on, friends? Bad Guy Cam here with our NPBA Season 3 review. NPBA has wrapped up, for me at least, still going on right now. But sadly, I did not make playoffs, but I thought this would be a fun video to make to just go through the team, talk about how the season went overall, and then give out some awards to some of the Pokemon on the team. For NPBA Season 3, we didn't do too hot. We ended with a record of 4-5 and a differential of -4. So not the best season, not the best season at all. But what can you say? We were in a great division with some really great battlers. I could have definitely used my team a little bit differently, and I think I figured that out a little bit later in the season, as I kind of noticed as I was going through this. I lost my first 4 battles in a row, and then in our last 5, we won 4 of those 5. So there was definitely a turning point there, and we'll definitely talk about that as we start talking about some of the changes we made to the team. But definitely not the best season. I think this is the second time I've ever not made playoffs for a draft league, so a little bummed out about that, but we'll definitely come back stronger with season 4. That's just kind of like the general overview of how the season went. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the Pokemon on our team, and by some I mean all. We're going to do a quick breakdown of all of them, and then once we're all done going through all the Mons on the team, how they performed and how I feel they did, we are going to give out some awards. So stick around for that, but we're going to start breaking this down right now. So let's kick it off with Zeraora, first pick of the draft. We brought Zeraora 8 times, and they ended up with 7 kills, 4 deaths, which gives them a kill-to-death ratio of +3. Zeraora was tied for the most times brought during the season, only missing out on 1 game. And it also had a decent amount of kills. And for our number 1 pick, I was really hoping that it would be able to put in some work. We talked a lot about in our season intro about like redemption and me trying out a bunch of these Pokemons, and as I talk through them, like I'll try to like touch on that, but I do feel like I used Zeraora a little bit better this time. There were definitely a couple of games, especially earlier on, where I wasn't using Zeraora like I feel like I should have, and was worried too much about like, are they gonna switch in ground types, or what's gonna, am I gonna have a chance to set up? And that was kind of one of my big problems earlier on, was I was too worried about following my game plans, and I feel like that Zeraora usually had a good game plan. I just couldn't get it into that position where it was going to execute it first. So later in the season, I was able to really help Zeraora to shine by really just letting it do what it does, and that's be fast, hit some stuff, pivot, turn around, and really just be annoying more than be like a setup sweeper per se, where it's going to just run through entire teams. So I feel like overall good season for Zeraora, and really happy with how Zeraora performed. Next up we have Mega Venusaur, and this is the other Mon who is tied for the most times brought. We brought Mega Venusaur 8 out of 9 times, and had Mega Venusaur had 2 kills and 7 deaths, which gives it a -5 kill-to-death ratio. Venusaur was our sacrificial lamb this time around. I feel like Mega Venusaur is a great Mon. I think it's got some stupendous bulk and utility in what it does. Unfortunately, I feel like I don't really bring it out super well. I ended up running a defensive Venusaur like every single week with very similar sets. So it was some sort of like Leech Seed protect combination, and then a few moves, whether that was knockoff, Giga Drain, Energy Ball, Sludge Bomb. I think I can't really remember off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure I went like physical one week where I had like Earthquake and knockoff. And that was kind of about as crazy as I got with Mega Venusaur. I feel like that made it kind of predictable. And I eventually ended up using it mostly in situations to sack off to bring in a bigger Mon, which is totally a viable thing in Draft League. It's just, it makes it tough when, this was one of my top picked Mons. Like I think I picked it up second overall, and it just didn't do the things I was hoping it was going to do. So overall, I would say it was a mediocre season from Mega Venusaur. Did some good things, but it really wasn't anything. There wasn't anything really standout worthy that was making me think. Yeah, Mega Venusaur, that was such an amazing pick. I'm so excited that I'm bringing this Mon every single week. It was more of brought out of necessity than out of what could have been, I guess, what we'll say. So that's pretty much it for Mega Venusaur. Let's move on to our next pick, who was Salamence. And Salamence we brought 5 times, so we brought him just over half of the amount of times. 5 kills, 3 deaths with a positive 2 kill to death ratio. And a lot of that, so Salamence, right? Salamence is a very interesting Pokemon for me. I feel like I was able to use it decently well. Most times I brought it, it was usually in like that Dragon Dance variety, which is one of the most common ways you're going to see a Salamence. And for the most part, we did okay. I remember there was one battle, I can't remember against who. I probably should have taken better notes for this, but there was one battle where had I been running like a Lumberry instead of heavy duty boots, I would have been able to avoid being toxic, get set up with a Dragon Dance, and then just ran through an entire team. So it really was unfortunate. There were a couple situations where Salamence had been set up pretty good, and had my prep been a little bit better, it probably would have performed decently well. Very happy in one of our, I believe it was in our last game of the season against Luigi, but I brought a Specs variant, which was kind of a different version that performed really well. And so overall, I do feel like that we brought some good variety with Salamence. It did pretty good for the matches that it was in. I wouldn't say that it was anything like crazy out of this world, but when we have a positive KD ratio, that means that usually something good happens. It was surviving, it was getting some kills, and overall it did pretty decent throughout the season. I feel like kind of like looking at my teams in the past, there was a little lull there where I wasn't really bringing it because I was focusing more on like defensive brings, where Salamence could be brought defensively. I think I brought it defensively once with like Roost and Defog, but it didn't last very long in that game. So it just happens, right? So Salamence overall, I'd give it like a good for the season. Nothing too crazy, but definitely had a bit more of a presence than Mega Venusaur did previously. Next up, we're going to be talking about Metagross. Metagross we brought 5 times, so same as Salamence. 3 kills, 5 deaths, so we have that -2 KD ratio. Metagross started off the season so strong. Like, when I remember the first couple games in, even though we were losing, Metagross was performing quite well. So I was really excited about Metagross, but then it really fell off for the rest of the season. Like, I really didn't feel like it was doing as much. It was doing a decent amount of damage. Like, I brought a few different types of sets. I brought defensive Stealth Rock, I brought Choice Band, I brought Weakness Policy, Agility. There were a lot of different things, and I think that was my biggest problem was I kind of got a little crazy with Metagross, to be completely honest, and it ended up being not as good of a bring as I thought. There was like in most cases it worked out pretty well. One in particular, I can't remember who this was against, but like I brought like a defensive variant to help out with a Latios, and it actually put in quite a bit of work from a defensive standpoint. I don't believe it got any kills that time around. It definitely died, but it was able to do some good defensive work without necessarily showing it in the stats. But overall, again, it was okay. I think we're just gonna say okay for Metagross. It wasn't anything super disappointing, but at the same time, it really wasn't that good. I feel like I think I could have saved some points with my Metagross for what I was doing with it, and maybe switched it out for something like a Bronzong, where it's that same typing, gives it the levitate ability, but then it gives me a few extra points. I could have picked up another Mon, or picked up a little bit better Pokemon at some point with a trade. So overall, okay. Next, we're going to be talking about Alolan Ninetales. And Alolan Ninetales we brought 7 times, so we brought it the majority of the time, only missing out twice. 4 kills, 5 deaths, so a -1 kill to death ratio there. I really liked using Alolan Ninetales. I think what it did for me this season was it gave me a great option for a lot of the big like threats, like how do I want to say this, like of course there's a lot of threats, but like all those offensive threats where I was able to get in, set up Aurora Veils, and really get the chance to have the rest of my team do a little bit better. And I do think that Alola Ninetales allowed us to be a bit better, especially in those games where we were struggling. Getting up those Aurora Veils were extremely helpful. And it finished off the season super strong with a 3-kill sweep. So we were able to bring it as a utility mon most weeks, usually in response to something like a dragon type or a ground type, where we could bring some pretty strong moves, get an Aurora Veil set up, and that's what I really liked about Ninetales. I was able to run it both utility and with some offense at the same time. And it worked out pretty well. The stats don't really show it, and had we not got that like 3-kill sweep at the end of the season, we would have been sitting pretty rough on the KD ratio, but I think that that's just due to how I was using Ninetales, and I was okay with that. Whereas with like a Mega Venusaur, I wasn't happy with how Mega Venusaur turned out. Kind of doing a similar role. I feel like Ninetales actually performed the role. They ended up doing a similar role, and Ninetales did a little bit better. So overall, happy with Ninetales. Wasn't the best season, but overall, I'd give Ninetales a thumbs up. Okay, let's move on to Donphan. And Donphan was pretty good this season. As our ground type, it got brought pretty frequently, got brought 6 times, had 5 kills, 4 deaths with a positive 1 kill death ratio. Towards the end of the season, Donphan really picked up a lot of those kills. There were a couple games there where it was just doing so much damage, and I think I forget that Donphan has like a base 120 attack, and so Earthquakes and Stone Edges are going to do a decent amount of damage, especially where most of the time I ended up just running like a full HP max attack Adamant set. It was just doing so much damage, and the utility it has between having Rapid Spin and Stealth Rock, I do feel that Donphan did really, really well this season. I'm going to be honest, when I picked it up, I was kind of like on the fence about it because I like the Donphan. There was also, I think Mudsdale was still on the board, which I really enjoy using Mudsdale, but it didn't give me that Rapid Spin, so I was like, you know what, we'll go with Donphan this time. I've used it once before, and I was really happy with Donphan this season. It did a great job doing what it needed to do with the utility. It knocked things off, it hit things with Earthquake, and I think it really caused a lot of problems for my opponents that they weren't thinking they were going to have. So overall, really great season for Donphan, up there for one of my favorites of this season. Really enjoyed using Donphan. Next up, we're going to be talking about Umbreon. Umbreon was brought 3 times, had 0 kills, 2 deaths, which gives it a -2 KD ratio. Umbreon, I was a little disappointed, but it was more due to the fact that when you're drafting for Draft League, at least how I draft, is I look at the major threats that are going to be potentially drafted, and so you have big things like Dragapult, right, where you've got to have some way to shut down Dragapult, regardless of what your team is. And when I drafted this team, I did not know who my opponents were going to be yet, and so when I drafted Umbreon, it was kind of in anticipation to shut down some of those types of threats. Unfortunately, for Umbreon, it didn't really match up super well against a lot of the matchups that I had, and so it ended up sitting on the bench for most of the season. So it was brought second least amount of times on the team. I love Umbreon. Umbreon is a fantastic Pokemon. It was just that I feel like the other defensive mons I had matched up much better against the teams I was playing. So realistically, I can't be too harsh on Umbreon. It did what it was supposed to do, but in the end, this season, it really didn't do much of anything. Usually, I love like a good bulky mon that can Wish Pass and kind of help some of my other help out the team. And maybe that's something I could have looked at doing a little bit more early in the season, is trying to get those Wish Passes off and try to keep the Salamences and Metagrosses and Zeraoras a little healthier, but it is what it is, and I think that it was just a matter of there were better matchups most of the week, and so Umbreon wasn't being brought. Overall, I feel like I'm having a hard time giving Umbreon a grade, but I'm just going to say it was underperformed and underutilized is what we'll call Umbreon. Next up, we'll talk a little bit about Talonflame. So Talonflame, we brought 5 times, 2 kills, 4 deaths with a -2 KD ratio. Talonflame was very interesting this season. I wasn't sure because I've never used a Talonflame before, and I know it's fast. Gale Wings is an amazing ability, especially with the fact that heavy duty boots were introduced in this generation. And it did a pretty decent job, but at the same time, it's just, to me, fairly underwhelming. I mean, to get it set up, you have to either, like a sword stance, and then you have to keep yourself healthy. So, if you're trying to go for like that offensive route, like a sword stance roost, you kind of have to already put in those 2 moves. So you lose out on things like a U-turn, or if you want to try to be a bit more utility with defog, and then you can run a fire move and a flying type move, and that's pretty much all that it did, which I knew that when I drafted it, and I drafted it more to be kind of like that speedy pivot where I can defog, and it did that. So I can't be too upset with how it performed overall. But just, I think the biggest disappointment was just like realizing just how not strong it is, we'll say. We did bring some really fun sets. We brought both physical and special versions, and as well as more utility versions. So we were able to bring a bit of variety with Talonflame. It was just, it didn't quite work out. It did not like to hit the dual wing beats. I remember, I can't remember who it was, whoever had Black Kyurem, and there was like Talonflame versus Black Kyurem, and we missed 2 dual wing beats in a row. And had we hit those, we actually probably could have done something about the Kyurem, but unfortunately we missed. So that's just how it is, and that's how it ended up being. And had we hit those, we might have actually been able to win that game and make playoffs. So not calling out Talonflame, but let's try to hit our dual wing beats next time. Other than that, we're just going to say Talonflame did what it was supposed to do. Would I have picked something different? More probably, had it been available. Had Moltres been still available, which got picked the round before, would have snapped up Moltres 100%. Okay, next let's talk about Zangoose. Not much to say. Zangoose got brought once, had 0 kills, 1 death, -1 KD ratio. That one time that we brought it, it was looking to do a belly drum setup, and I think we ended up getting 6-0'd that time. So, not super great. The problem with Zangoose was there were actually a couple times where I had it on the team sheet. It was ready to go. I had created I had made a set for it, and then just kind of looking at the team and looking at my opponent, I was like, I don't think this is the best bring, and it's better to bring Salamence or Metagross, and that's usually what happened when it came to Zangoose. Like, it does have a great ability, it's got a great attack stat, it's got that quick attack priority, and maybe had I given it a bit more of a chance, maybe it could have done better. I just feel like it didn't fit in as nearly as many situations as I would have liked it to. One of the other big things kind of holding it back is its speed stat, where I'm not really able to run that choice scarf, considering it's like I'm going to be running some sort of like toxic boost or a like belly drum set, and so you can't really get faster than that base. What is it? Base 90, base 95. I've got it right here. I can check. Base 90. And so it wasn't outspeeding things enough to be like a big major threat. Without having to set up and having that quick attack as an available option. So it is what it is. Would I draft Zangoose again? Maybe. It's a good option to have on the bench, just so people do have to think about things like a belly drum quick attack set, or just getting those toxic boost sets going. So it's good to have on the bench, but I don't know. It's kind of a tough one. But overall, very underused, didn't really use it at all, so I'm going to say kind of a poor season from Zangoose. And then the last mon that we're going to be talking about is our Jellicent. So Jellicent came onto the team after week 4. in replacing Arctovish and Galarian Corsola. So just as a quick note on those two, Arctovish didn't get brought at all. Zeros across the board. I had it on a couple teams considering doing like a Slush Rush version, considered doing a defensive version in our first few games, but in the end it wasn't gonna work. And I kind of felt that we needed a better water type, especially after we got ran through by the Cinderace, and that I think that was the game we got 6-0'd. And it just kind of wrecked us, right? And so I figured I need a better water type. And Galarian Corsola was there, and Galarian Corsola actually came to our first game and got 1 kill technically from Stealth Rocks. And it did a pretty decent job for what it was doing, and I do enjoy Galarian Corsola. However, kind of looking at my team and what changes need to be made, Jellicent really filled the role of both that water type I needed and pretty much everything that Galarian Corsola was already doing, minus the Stealth Rocks. So being able to, Sap Sip, Will-O-Wisp, and be that utility, as well as, kind of recover up and sit and be a wall, I felt was a better fit on my team than having those two, and being able to bring just one Mon who could do both the heavy bulky water side of things, as well as the general bulk of a Galarian Corsola, plus the utility side of using the Strength Saps, the Recovers, the Will-O-Wisps to break down the other team's Mons. So that was the trade that we made partway through the season, and we actually saw big changes happen right after that. So we made our trade, and then from there we kicked off. And I do think that Jellicent had a huge part in that, because we ended up bringing it 5 times. So every single week after we picked it up, we brought it. So 5 times, 5 kills, 3 deaths with a positive 2 KD ratio. So Jellicent was an absolute monster this time around. I really wish we had it from the beginning of the season. I think it would have been so much more helpful in some of those situations earlier on. But very, very happy with how Jellicent performed. It did a great job being that bulky Mon with Recover. Gets super annoying. Highlight of the season had to be when it got 4 cursed bodies in a row. I remember that one. That was against Jode. So that was pretty crazy. I mean, it didn't really do anything to affect the outcome of the match, but for what it did, I brought very similar sets every week. Whether it was a Recover or Strength Sap, and then either Will-O-Wisp or Toxic, and then like a Hex Scald, or maybe throw in like a Taunt instead of one of those. And it really was brought very similar every single week, which it worked out super well. Even though I'm sure people were able to predict what it was going to be doing, it did what it did really, really well. So that is our Jellicent. I'm going to say Jellicent was definitely one of the standouts of the season for me. Okay, so let's get to some awards, and we're going to assign out a couple different awards. So I'm just going to kind of go through. There's 3 that I've thought up. First, we're just going to have, the most lethal, so the most knockouts. We have the surprise of the season, then we have the MVP. So let's kick things off with the most obvious one, just based off of numbers. And we're going to go for the most knockouts in the season. The award goes to Zeraora. And as we talked about earlier, Zeraora had 7 kills, which was our team leader. Overall this season, we didn't really have like 1 or 2 people that were getting, or 1 or 2 Mons that were getting most of the kills. It was actually pretty evenly distributed with, we had Zeraora at 7, but then we had Salamence, Donphan, and Jellicent all with 5 kills after that. And so it was like the kills were spread out pretty evenly, and I would have loved to see, maybe that one threat come through, but Zeraora had the best KD ratio, had the most kills, so I gotta definitely give Zeraora the most kills award, because that's just what the numbers say. Okay, next up we're gonna be doing the surprise of the season, and I kind of cheated on this one because I couldn't decide which one I wanted to be more of my surprise, but we are going to give the shared award to Donphan and Jellicent. After I just got done raving about Jellicent, like, it shouldn't be any, surprise that it is the surprise of the season, because I was hoping that Jellicent would just be able to fill that role of being bulky, of the with a bulky water type because fire types were running through us, and it ended up doing so much more than that. And it was a really, really good mon and a great defensive mon that was able to pivot and help the team out. Donphan, I'm putting as surprise of the season because it really did so much work, and it was crazy what it was able to do. Like between the utility side of setting up stealth rocks and rapid spinning, setting up for the team, and just being able to hit hard in general. These are definitely two mons I was expecting more to just kind of like be there, play their role, right? But they ended up stepping up, and I was able to use them a little bit more effectively than I was thinking I was going to be able to. So I wanted to give it to Jellicent straight up, if I'm being honest, just because of how much of an impact it had on the team coming in. But as I was thinking about it, like, I can't ignore Donphan. Donphan was around for the whole season. Jellicent was around for part of the season, and I was just super, super impressed with how these two mons were able to perform compared to some of the other big mons on the team, like the Mega Venusaur, Salamence, Metagross, that it was able to they were able to outperform. So in some cases, right, depending on what we're looking at. So those are our two surprises of the season and our final MVP pick. And this one was a tough choice because this is going to sound awful, but I feel like there weren't a lot of mons in consideration for this. It was pretty much the ones that I'd already given awards to, because the rest of the team just was kind of mediocre, right? And that's what, looking at a season like this, kind of makes sense, right? There wasn't any major standouts, and so after some deliberation, it was decided that the MVP of the team award was going to be given to Zeraora. I think this is kind of an annoying pick for me, but we're going to go with it, and I'm going to tell you why. So, Zeraora was brought the most out of any mon on the team. It had the most kills on the team. It had some of the least deaths on the team. It had the best KD ratio. And it's, a 17 point, up high point Pokemon for a reason. And I think that we were able to use Zeraora really well. And overall, I was very happy with what I was able to do with it from that, redemption stand of things, where previously I didn't have much of a chance to use it. It is a mon that I would consider using again, I guess, is kind of where I'm getting with this. There's a few mons on this team where I'm like, I think I've had my fill of them. And if there's a certain niche that needs to be fit, or they're super, super low point-wise for whatever reason, from the draft perspective, I might pick them up, but Zeraora, I would definitely consider picking up again, especially if I was able to build like a really, really solid team around it. But yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and give Zeraora the MVP for the season for being the mon that we brought the most, for having the most kills, and for just in general probably being one of the biggest threats that needed to be prepped for on the team. So congratulations to Zeraora, and for the rest of our award winners, so we got Zeraora with the most knockouts, we have a Zeraora with the MVP, Donphan and Jellicent sharing the Surprise of the Season award as well. All right, well, that is our Season 3 recap. A little, personally, definitely a little disappointed with how it ended up, but, things happened. There was a lot going on for me outside of, just the Pokemon draft world, with work and things like that. So it definitely happens, and this is definitely a super fun hobby that I love to do, and love playing in the NPBA. Such great people, and it's a really great place to just kick back, relax, and have a good time. So very excited for Season 4. Submitted my application already. Hopefully Jode sees it in his graces to keep me around, but very much looking forward to that season. And I'm hoping that we can make these videos even better as we move forward. So thank you everyone who watched this season. I know it was a little bit of a struggle, but we will be back with Season 4. We'll do our draft analysis, we'll have our weekly battles, and we'll have a season review there as well. So thank you again, everyone who watched. Thank you everyone for a great season, and we will catch you next time. See ya.